Hi guys, it's Jordan from P&P Campers. Just going to do your handover video on your Burstner Elegance. I believe it's an i821. But yeah, we're starting with the bonnet just here. So I'll just show you as well. I just wanted to show you straight away, when you come to actually opening the bonnet, you pull the top of the bonnet here after you've released it from where I'll show you in a minute. And then you've got a little lever just down there at the bottom. So you actually need to pull that open and the whole bonnet opens up. Then we got washer fluid just here on the left, engine coolant, brake fluid up there attached to the servo at the back, engine oil and the engine oil dipstick, and then over on the right you've got your positive terminal for your battery, engine battery just there, and the negative is basically just any decent sort of negative piece of metal, so any of this sort of thing will be all right. The engine battery for these cabs sits under the floor in the cab, so that's why the battery sort of jump start points are inside just there. Bonnet release is just inside here, and your engine battery sits underneath this little bit of floor just here. Diesel filling point is this one just here. Nice design on that. And you can put a little key in there and lock that if you want to, but you don't need to if you don't want to. So that's your diesel filling point. Down underneath here, on the near side, you've got your, so I think it's an Ebl unit. So it's basically just your power supply unit. So that sort of supplies the power around the vehicle where it needs to go, you know, as and when it needs to. These are all pretty reliable units. They're quite easy to get parts for if they ever needed them, but you shouldn't ever get any problems with that really. Fresh water inlet, so that's your water inlet there, and if you fill that tank up just there, that'll give you access to using all of your fresh water around the van, coming through your taps and your sink and all that sort of stuff. Hookup point, you can see there I've got the hookup plugged in at the moment. Reason being, I've got the air conditioning on in there, which I've because it's so hot, I wanted it on anyway, but I thought I'd just actually have it on and show you it working, and so you can see how it works and that as well. So yeah, hookup point is there, so that's anything 240 volt, needs that plugged into it. If you don't have that plugged in, your battery charger won't be on either, so your leisure battery will start to sort of, it won't be being charged up basically. So if you are going to use things on 12 volts, so your lights and ignition and things like that, it's always better to have a hookup plugged in, just if you can, just so that it keeps on top of that battery charge. Your boiler sort of cover just here, so this is your Audi heating system. So if you had that on, you feel a little bit of warm air pumping out through here. You can see this little bit here, when you actually turn it on, you'll notice that it sort of produces a little bit of water as condensation, and it'll just sort of like come down here and just drip down. It's totally normal. You can also see actually where it's kind of marked the van over the years, so that's just one of those things, unfortunately. I've done my best tidying up your bike rack and tow bar, so I haven't done this back part because it wasn't too bad at all. I didn't want to sort of ruin it by going too crazy and then possibly sort of making a mess of it, but I took this part off, sanded it all back and resprayed this whole thing, so that's all nice new fresh paint. And tow bar as well, I know that we didn't say that we go too crazy on it, but I have actually taken it all right back and resprayed it completely, so well, at least its front part anyway, so yeah, you should be happy with that. I think it's come up all right really. It's a little bit of a gloss finish to it, the paint that I use as well, so it's it does look quite good, I think. This little garage back here, really you should do that with both hands, by the way. It's just a bit awkward to open it up otherwise, so just pull both of these at the same time and this locker will open up, same as the one on the other side actually. So you got this little light just here, so you can turn that on and off as and when you please. All these pipes just here are all to do with your Audi heating system, so you can leave those as they are. Basically all it is just like little valves, because these pipes here are just like coolant water pipes, because I'm not sure if you've had a van with Audi before, but Audi heating, sorry, is actually just like a wet central heating kind of thing. Obviously the hot water is slightly different to come to your taps, but the actual heating itself just goes around to all these little radiators inside here. So there'll be one just here. There'll be, there's loads dotted around the van, and so all of these pipes just go to the little radiators that are dotted about. So these little valves just basically isolate certain ones and all that. So, but you can basically just leave them how they are. You don't need to worry about those really. Under here, got a couple of bits I want to show you. So the grey one at the very back there, if I just turn that so you can see what it's like when it's turned, a little bit stiff, but that's pretty normal. So that's draining out the wastewater from the van. And the other two, the red one drains out your boiler, sort of, the hot water side of the van, and the blue one drains out the cold water side. So if you filled up your fresh water tank from the other side where I just showed you, and then opened up the blue one just there, all the fresh water would just pump out from underneath the van. And if you wanted to drain out all of your the boiler system and all that, then you could just drain it out from the red side. So basically, when you come to draining out the system before winter and all that sort of stuff, just open all of those up and just leave them open. And it's pretty much as simple as that, really. Right, just gonna try and walk around the water so that I don't get your van filthy after it's just been cleaned. Right, so just above here is your external water point, and underneath there is your toilet cassette locker. So toilet cassette locker is really, really simple. All you need to know really is you lift up from here and pull it out, push that little flap back in, and then all you need to know is just drain it out from here. And when you are draining it out, you need to hold down the little yellow button back there, just like an air pressure release valve. Push it all the way back in till you hear the click, and then you're good to go. You've got a freshwater flush, so you don't need to worry about any sort of extra, external flush fluid anywhere, because that's all just literally straight from your freshwater tank. So these two vents just here are for your fridge, so you shouldn't need to get to either of those. And you've got an external gas point just here. So bullfinch gas point, pretty standard little units. Down here, just behind the, or in front of the sorry, I don't know, I can't get my words out today. Just in front of the habitation door is your leisure batteries. And you can see actually that you can see all the way through to the other side. So if you ever wanted to store anything that's quite long, sort of like wet storage, you've got what's called a double skinned motorhome. So you could actually put things all the way through here underneath the floor that you stand on inside. So that's all there if you want to. So you can see there you've got two what look like 110 amp batteries in here, and they're actually, so it says cyclic performance, so I'm not sure whether or not it is, I can see it's 105 amp hour, but basically you've got two whacking great big batteries in there, so your the power that you can use over a certain amount of time is much more than just a singular smaller battery. So that's already been done for you by a previous customer. So that's your leisure batteries if you should ever need to get to them. And the last thing really on the outside is your gas locker. So again, being a Burstner, being a bigger van, you've got the space here for two of the 13 kilo propane bottles if you wanted them. This one here is a 6 kilo, but I think you'd be quite surprised how long just one 6 kilo propane gas bottle actually lasts. You will be impressed. And again, I don't know if you've had a van or not before, but yeah. So turning the bottle off is clockwise around to the right, and turning it on is anti-clockwise around to the left. All of the stuff here on the regulator, you don't need to worry about that whatsoever. The only thing you need to know really is to turn your gas bottle off before you start driving every time. And when you come to changing this tail over to a different bottle, you just literally loosen it off from here and tighten it onto your other bottle about as tight as this one was. So you don't need to go crazy tight on them because they are metal to metal, but you can just basically get to where it goes stiff and just give it a little turn around, and then that's about as far as you need to go with it. If you go too tight, you'll basically thread it out because it's only brass. Right, so I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get in now so I don't let too much of that cool air out, and show you around the cab. So just pop that aircon back to the middle again. So your new armrest covers are here as well. I've just fitted those back on. They look really nice. They've done really good job around the place we get them done, so they're, you know, pretty much exactly how they were, thankfully. So a couple of things. You've got a radio isolator switch just here, so if you wonder why the radio isn't coming on, it's because of that. The reason you'd have one of those is really common on motorhomes for the radios to be wired up so that they can stay on constantly, rather than in a normal car. You could, when you turn the ignition off, obviously the radio goes off straight away. If they haven't got that, then they usually fit these little switches just here, or at least they should fit the switches, so that you don't drain out your battery, so that you can't start the van up, basically. So when you get out of the van, try to remember to turn off that little black switch just there to turn off your radio completely. Other than that, you've got a couple of nice extras. You've got cruise control, which works from here, 6-speed manual gearbox rather than the 5-speed, ASR control here. You can lock and unlock the cab from inside, front and rear fogs, and your hazard warning lights. Air conditioning works from this switch just here, and that's obviously your cab air conditioning rather than the back end air conditioning, which I will show you separately. And your reversing camera there. You have actually also got sensors at the back of the van, which I noticed a minute ago when I was wandering about. But yeah, you should be okay when you got the camera on, really. So that's the cab. Okay, so hopefully the aircon unit's not too noisy. So I'll start up here just above the television unit and all that. A couple of things are flashing here, so I'll just run you through those as a good example, just to show you what they mean. So this one here is telling you that your fresh water level is too low, basically, and that's also what the alarm light is saying. When you fill the van up with fresh water, that will stop, and then it will just basically just stay clear. The other two means that the water pump has got power going to it, which is what you want to see, really, because it's a submersible 12-volt pump. So let me just turn that fan down a little bit. Right, so really you want that to be on, because that's a 12-volt submersible pump. What that means is basically when you if that light is on, it means there's power going to it. So instead of I say it's standard, but it's about half and half, really. Instead of a lot of pumps where the pump works off of pressure, so it will only come on when the pressure goes low, a submersible pump like you have on these Burstners is basically just 12-volt run. So there's a little switch inside here. When I lift it up, the switch opens, and that is what creates the circuit for the pump to come on. So if you don't have this little symbol here on, you won't be able to use your pump. The pump won't work. But where it is now, that's good. So that should just come on when you turn your power on, basically. And the other one here is telling me that I've got the hookup plugged in. And also, if you have a hookup plugged in and that light isn't there, it probably means that one, your hookup's not plugged in properly, or it's not turned on at the switch or whatever, or it means that your battery charger isn't switched on or whatever. But basically, until something goes wrong, you should always have that light come on when you plug a hookup into the van. So the next bits, you've got this little button up here, just turn it on, and then you can click on this one. So 99% full in your leisure batteries, and that's 14.3 volts. And the reason it's at that high power level is because you've got the hookup plugged in and your charger is working. Click through again, 13.5 volts in your engine battery, which is actually really high. So I would imagine that you've got some kind of the charger probably charges up both batteries at once, or there's a solar panel on the roof which is connected up to both. I'm not entirely sure. So 13.5 in the engine battery. All right, so that's absolutely perfect. Next one down is your water levels. So again, 0% in the fresh water, which is why it's flashing. 25% in the wastewater, because it's still actually draining out outside. So that's why that is. But so the one here with no bit at the top and a drain at the bottom is your waste. And that one there with the water in the top is the fresh. The little switches here at the bottom is your 12-volt on and off switch. So if I turn that off now, then anything 12 volts, so lights and things like that, will just turn off. But otherwise, that's about it. That's your control panel. If you want to turn your 12-volt off, like I said, just turn it off there. So that's what you would do basically if you were getting out of the van to finish up. So that is that. Microwave over the top of the fridge just there, and you can see that the power is on right now because the hookup's plugged into it. If there was no hookup plugged into the van, this would not work because it's a 240 volt appliance. The fridge, it's a 3-way fridge, so obviously meaning it works 3 ways, but it's also an automatic energy selector fridge, or a AES fridge, that's what you call it. So this fridge, the same as all the other motorhome fridges, works on gas, 240 volt and 12 volt. So the gas is what you would use, generally speaking, if you had gas in your bottle and it was switched on, and if you didn't have a hookup plugged into the van, you'd probably use gas. So just literally turn it one to the right, the fridge will light on its own. I can hear it just trying now, and it's just lit up. So you can hear the igniter going and going and going, and then it'll just turn itself off when it lights up. If this little amber light in here just stays on constantly, that means that your fridge is lit up. If the amber light starts flashing at you, it's not something to worry about, it just means that the fridge hasn't quite lit up. So then all you'd have to do is go off, back on, and that's it. All right. If you've got a hookup plugged into the van, like I do at the moment, I would go over there to the hookup, and then you get a little green light come on in there. And if your engine was running, I'd go down to this one just here. And by the way, just the reason it's not working is because I've just felt it pop off at the back, so I just need to put that back on in a minute properly, just so, in case you were wondering. Yeah, so I'd put it there for 240 volt. If the hookup was plugged in, I'd be on this one. And if the engine was running and I was driving the van, I would have it here on 12 volt. So the reason why, well, let me just run you through it. So the way that you have to use it is, the only ways to get the actual fridge cold on its own will be the gas or the 240 volt. You need to get the fridge cold before you turn it over to this 12 volt one for when you're driving, because all the 12 volt does is hold the temperature that it's already set to, basically. You can't expect it basically to cool down on its own on 12 volt, because it just won't. The 12 volt element in the back of the fridge is way less powerful than the 240 volt one, and it's not powerful enough to get it cold on its own. So if you're going to go away tomorrow morning, I would sort of advise you to get it cold first the night before, either via gas or mains, and then switch over to 12 volt just for when you're driving. All right. You can also leave it down here on auto if you want to, and then it should just select whichever sort of energy it can, which is why it's called the automatic energy selector. So you can just leave it down there on auto all the time if you want to. But again, that's up to you. The bit over here is only really useful it's not anything to do with the mains really, it's more to do with the gas. So if you struggle to light it up in the peak of summer where it's super hot outside, then you can turn this right the way down, and then it should light, and then you can turn it on all the way. But if I'm honest with you, it lit straight up a minute ago, and it's sort of 35 degrees outside, so it should be all right. The fridge itself has got a little lock mechanism on it, so you can put it back over, lock it, so you can't open it. Same for the fridge, just works like that. So that's the fridge, nice and simple. The air conditioning unit, which I'm thankful of because it's so hot outside, you've got this little remote just here, which I just grabbed from up here, so it's on this little mount up here. Now obviously this is a 240 volt appliance, so this won't work unless your hookup's plugged in, a lot like the mains on the fridge there. But when it's actually on and running, it's really quite good. So it's pretty simple. You've got, so I can't work out, it's easier to show you. A main on and off switch just here, so if I press that now, it just turns itself off. When you are pressing the buttons, it's best to point it towards this little sensor here, because that's the receiver for this remote. So it's like an old TV basically, where you got to aim it at the telly. So turn it on, and then it'll just basically start doing its own thing. You've got this little button just here, which is the fan speed setting. So if I show you, you get another little line down here, which means the fan's coming out a bit more powerful now, which is actually lovely. And mode down here, which if I open this up quickly, oh, for God's sake, just has to happen on the video, doesn't it? So you've got mode, which basically changes, so you see the icons thing there, cool, which I've got it on at the moment, fan, which is just literally just blowing whatever air is already there around, furnace, which I'm not exactly sure what that actually means, like I don't know what that would, I'm assuming it's got something to do with heat, but I don't know. But the main ones really is the heat one down there in the bottom left. So if you had a little sunshine symbol up there instead of the ice symbol, it would actually start to heat up the air that it's blowing around. So if it's cold outside, you can actually kind of use it as a heater as well. So that's it. The main ones really are the cool and the heat ones. I've got it on cool at the moment, as you can see the little ice symbol at the top there. And then I could just basically just turn up the fan if I wanted to. Just like that. But I'll leave it on 3, I think. There you go. Right. So that's your air conditioning unit from up there. I have also just noticed, I think this should probably be something to do with solar, although I'm not sure. Let me just make sure of that. Okay, the next thing is, inside this cupboard here, you've got your satellite dome on the roof. So, you've got this sort of like receiver box, basically. Turn this little switch on back here, sends power to both of these units. To actually get this satellite to work, you just turn this button on, and what will happen is the satellite will lock on to whichever one you want it to, but it will actually try to lock on to Astra 2 probably, or Astra 1, I'm not sure. Usually Astra 2 on the newer ones, but I'm not sure if it'll, I don't know. But you can hear it basically on the roof, searching for it. And then basically when you plug in your TV to whatever point, probably this one over here, I'd imagine it's already been hooked up to, it will essentially grab the signal that it needs to from this box here, from the actual Canos box, send it to the receiver, which then sends it over to your TV. So if we just wait a second, it should lock on. There you go. So Astra 1, Astra 2, I'm not sure which one is actually locked onto, but there you go, locked on. So that's what that little amber light means there. So I just wanted to show you that all working so that you can see that it works, because obviously, you know, the aircon and the satellite dish on the roof are pretty much the, well, you know, they are the most expensive parts, but they're also pretty important. So I just wanted to show you it all working. Switch it off from here, it'll go back to its original position, and then you can turn the power off from up there after that's done that, you know, done its thing. So that's the TV section up there. You've got various light switches down here. So this one does these 3 lights just above your head, which is a nice little entrance light if you you know, if you're getting in here when it's dark. So that's what that button's there for, basically. Okay, so next thing I want to show you is you've got your Audi heating system and a little button down there which says pump, or however you'd say that word in German, which I'm just going to say pump because that's what it means. So you've got the actual Audi system up here, so it's super simple the way that it actually works. You can leave this on this little circle here if you want to, or turn it right the way up. It's totally up to you. Okay, so I'll show you on the right hand side here. It's the most important one really. So you've got 1 up, which is heating and hot water at the same time, and 2 up, which is hot water only without heating. So on a day like today, I obviously do not want the heating on because it's so hot, but I still might like a hot shower. So I would go up to the top here and then choose which energy I want the boiler to use to get the hot water. So at the moment, I would prefer to use gas, so I'll turn the gas switch on. You should get a little light come up on here in a minute once it's lit up. But basically, it will just heat up, heat the water up inside of it, and then you get hot water coming through the hot side of your taps. All right, it really is as simple as that. So I've just heard it light up just there, or tried to light up anyway. But yeah, simple as that. To turn it off, basically turning the entire boiler off is just turning it one down to the middle and one down again. So right now the entire boiler system is off. Even though this is here on gas, it is off. All right. If it wasn't a hot day and I wanted the heating and the hot water and all that sort of stuff on, I'd go one up for heating and hot water, and then I would either use gas, which is the one here, or, and this applies for the hot water only as well, by the way, just thought I'd show you it like this, or if I had a hookup plugged into the van, which I do at the moment, I could use 1 electric, 2 electric, or 3. So, at the moment, no gas, 1 electric, heating and hot water. So at the minute, we're on heating and hot water on electric. All right, so that's how that works. Now let me just tell you one thing as well. The 3 electric here at the top, I'm not sure if we would have written it down on the hab sheet or not, but the 3 electric can draw about 10 amps, which, you know, if you're not aware, is a huge amount of power, absolutely loads of power. So it's really important. If I'm honest with you, I just wouldn't use that one at all because it's too much power. Reason being, if I switch that up to 3 electric now and it started drawing 10 amps, I've got your aircon unit on up there, which is probably drawing like 5 amps or something like that. It would overload the plug that it's plugged into just by using this and this, if I had it on 3 electric. If I leave it on 1, it draws more like 4 amps, and so it'd be absolutely fine because it's not over the 13 amp plug that I'm plugged into. All right, so that's really important. One thing to remember, if you're on a campsite, what you have to look out for basically is if you hook up at a campsite and you've hooked up to a 10 amp pole, then basically you need to just add up how many amps. We don't have to do this, it's sort of like good practice. So like for example, if you're plugged into a 10 amp pole, you could probably use the Audi system on 3 on the electric side, but if you then turn on the aircon unit, it would just trip the power because it'd be too much power running through it. Yeah, so yeah, I hope that makes sense. But basically, if I was you, I would leave that on 1 or maybe 2 on the electric side. If you are going to use it on electric, then I'd just use it on 1 or 2 so that you don't run into that sort of tripping electric problem. It won't do any harm to anything, it will just trip the power, and obviously it's a bit of a pain to have to go outside and switch it back on again on your post, but yeah, so it's one of those things. You have got a inverter down there which has got a little switch on the side of it to turn it on and a plug socket. So what an inverter does is it increases, so basically it'll take 12 volt power from your leisure batteries and switch it around and sort of invert it to 240 volts. So if you turn that button on and then plug a 240 volt appliance into it, it would work, but it's just quite important to remember that converting 12 volt power to 240 volt power is drawing a hell of a lot of power from your batteries. So in my opinion, they're not the best idea, because if you didn't have a hookup plugged into the van or whatever like that, if you had that switched on and something plugged into it for ages and ages, it would just drain your batteries down, you know, pretty quickly. But it's down there. If you desperately need 240 volt power, you know, for a short while, they're fantastic, but try not to use it for too long because you end up draining your batteries out a little bit. And also, like I was going to say, the pump switch here, what the pump switch does is it's all related to the Audi system. So you'll find any van that has this Audi system in it will have the pump switch as well. The pump switch, basically, when you turn that on, you know the pipes I was showing you in the garage there, which have the pipes running to the little radiators that are dotted about? That's the pump for that coolant to pump around to the radiators. So turning your heating on, which is that one there, like I said, one up, heating on gas, at the minute, the coolant that's there at the boiler will be heating up. But until you turn that pump switch on, it kind of pumps the water. It's like a household combi boiler, basically. It just pumps the water around whilst it's heating it up, and then after sort of half an hour or so, all the little radiators that are dotted about the van will be nice and warm. So if you don't turn that pump switch on, you basically, you know, it won't actually pump the hot water around. So turn that off when you're done with it. Buttons all the way down when you're done with the boiler, and then you're good. So the cooker is again nice and simple. You got an ignition switch just here, which does the ignition for all 4 burners, the grill and the oven. The oven switch is this one over here on the right, and the grill is this one here. Obviously the grill needs to be open before you use it, but you know, I don't need to show you how to use any of this. It's all pretty straightforward stuff, just like any household cooker. The only thing I will show you, well, 2 things really, is you've got a thermocouple on each of these, and in fact you've got a thermocouple on every single gas appliance in this entire van. What a thermocouple does is, or a flame failure device, you might know it by, what they do is essentially they sense burning gas, or hot gas anyway, you know, flame basically. So if I turn this here, no gas will come out of here until I light it up. Alright, just turning it like that, absolutely no gas is coming out from that whatsoever until I light it up. And the reason for that is the thermocouple hasn't noticed any burning gas there yet, so it's not allowing the gas to come through. And the reason that it does that is if I light any of these up, so if I did actually light one of these up, so that's on there now, right? I'm still holding it in, and now when I let go, it stays on. So now when it's here, it is on, all right? If I had this window open and the wind blew that out, the thermocouple will notice that, and instead of just pumping excess gas through that isn't actually lit up, so just pumping raw gas into here, the thermocouple recognises that the flame isn't there anymore, and it will just turn the gas off, like that. It will just switch it off. Okay? So if you didn't have the thermocouple on any of these, or any gas appliance, the flame could just get blown out, and then the gas would just carry on pumping through until you turned it off. So you can sort of like rest assured that that's all being checked over, and then it's all being, you know, it's all correct. Light inside the oven is from this switch just here. And I will just say as well, it's really important that you remember to turn those off. The amount of times that I've seen customers come in with the lights on inside the oven, because obviously it's, you know, if I have the light on in the oven, just say you can't tell, can you really? So you need to make sure that you turn that off when you're finished with it, because it's so easy to forget that you've got it on. Right, the other thing I was going to tell you about this, you need to make sure that you leave all of this to cool down before you put this lid down. All right, I mean, it's okay, I had it on for like 5 seconds, so I can close it now. But if I had any of these on for any period of time to cook with, and then switched it off and put this straight down, I can pretty much guarantee you that this will shatter. It's just like any other glass. Glass is really, really strong, but when you get it hot and then instantly cold again, or hot on one side, cold on the other, they just break. So if you put this down just after using one of these, and they're roasting hot underneath and cold on the top, they do shatter. So as much as they are like reinforced, toughened glass, I can pretty much guarantee you that it will break if you put it down. Definitely if you put it down on a burning, you know, when it's actually lit. But if you put it down straight after you turn it off, I'm sure it will break. So again, just bear that in mind. Leave this up to let these to cool down first before you shut the lid straight down on it. This big wardrobe at the back here is quite important. So your actual Audi system, your actual boiler is down here. So you've got a little fan speed setting down there, which you don't need to worry about. Well, actually, it's a pump speed, I believe. So yeah, you don't need to worry about any of this down here. It all looks a little bit technical, but it's actually really quite simple. It's just like a combi boiler at home. So that's all obviously being checked to make sure it all works, and it does. Loads of paperwork for this van in here. Quite a few bits and pieces that you might or might not need. Bits and bobs from the the tow bar electrics and stuff like that. Yeah, all sorts of stuff really. So that's there. If you want to have a look through that. The other thing I want to show you is these trip switches here. So they're your 240 volt trip switches. If you plugged a dodgy plug into, or a dodgy appliance into one of your 240 volt plugs, so this one or whatever other one you want to use, then it should trip in there. And because your Audi, your heating system works like a boiler at home, and it's got coolant pumping around to like the radiators, you've obviously got a water tank or a coolant tank. So you can see there, minimum, maximum, and the actual level there is absolutely perfect, right in the middle. When you turn that pump switch on and it starts to warm up, you will notice that it will bubble a little bit, and that's completely normal. All right, so that's the stuff that you need to top up every once in a while. Just keep your eye on the level, basically. So that's that. What else have we got? Also, I don't know if you've seen this, but you've got like you can basically use this as like a back room, if you like. Kind of like hooks over a little bit there. So that's nice. Light back here comes these ones like that. Flushing your toilet is nice and simple. Push the button there, and then your fresh water pumps around the basin like that. And then to actually empty it out, open it up from there, drains it into the cassette, close it back over, closes the flap back over. That's really important to close that flap back over whenever you're done with the toilet, because if you don't close it back over, what will happen is, well, two things. You'll get a bad smell coming back up into the van, which you obviously don't want, but you'll also find that when you come to take the cassette out from outside, it will not budge. If you don't close it, it won't come out, it locks itself in. So you need to shut it every time you've finished. I don't mean to sound so formal, by the way. I'm just trying to trying to sort of give you tips. This little bit folds down to help you get up into the bed, which is quite cool. A lot of the old auto cruises have that same kind of idea in them. Little floor piece here, so you can get to the top of your freshwater tank if you should ever need to. It's in there. This switch here does the light in the shower, which you can see is behind this little cupboard, which stops it getting wet, obviously, but you know, it's just a cool design. And the reason, by the way, I've not shown you actually the water coming through the taps, because it's, you know, it's pretty self-explanatory. If I'm honest, it's just hot to the left, cold to the right. This you can put wherever you want to, but yeah, you get the gist. When you come to actually using the van. Another 240 volt socket up there, and not over there, but yeah, just various bits and pieces. Nice mattress cover up here, nice and comfortable. And this little switch just here obviously does these lights just here, which actually are pretty bright, bearing in mind it's light outside. You know, they are pretty good lights. Right, yeah, so I will say this aircon unit has been a lifesaver. That's, you know, really, really good. It's actually working really well. I wasn't sure, because if I'm honest, I haven't actually tried one of these aircon units in the vans before. Well, not to actually cool me down. I've tested them out and stuff, but yeah, it's working really well. So that's that. See, the colour isn't exactly the same, but they do look very, very good. They've been done really quite nicely. So I'll pop them back on now. So yeah, basically the main things are, when you come to driving off, making sure that all of your bits and pieces like this are down and secured. You know, if you had this, the worst thing about driving these motorhomes is when people forget to sort of lock these bits over, so push all these buttons in and all that, because you'll notice, if you, like for example, if you had this like that, right, I can guarantee you 5 seconds down the road this would just be all over, you know, smashing back and forward. So it's really important you just push everything, just double check everything, make sure it's all completely closed up and not going anywhere, because you will thank me for it when you know, it's so frustrating when you're driving off and everything's, you know, smashing about. It's so annoying. And the only other thing I want to show you really is in here. So you've got your gas isolator taps. So you've got a gas isolator for your cooker, so that's everything here. Gas isolator for your boiler, and a gas isolator for your fridge. So if you thought there was a gas leak or there was a, you know, significant problem with any of these, then you can just turn on, you know, each and every, yeah, basically individually isolate them from there. But you do not need to do that every time you get out of the van. It's unnecessary. Basically, turning the gas bottle off in the locker is plenty. But yeah, so basically, like I said, turn your gas off in your locker. Make sure that you do that before you drive. Any time you drive, it's really important. Windows shut, skylights down. Make sure that all your glass bits and pieces are down. Bits like this, pop them back where they should be. And yeah, just basically make sure there's nothing sort of on the sides, make sure all your sort of covers are shut down properly, because, you know, like I said, they will just fly open. All of these ones here work off this little magnet, so they are pretty strong. But yeah, so I think I've pretty much covered everything I can. I don't know if there's much else I can show you, but yeah, really lovely van. I know that we haven't had to do much to it at all as part of the habitation check and all that sort of thing. You know, there was a fair bill from the servicing things, but that was because the rear brakes on these, because it's a tag axle, you know, the brakes, when they sit around for a little while, not that it has been sat, to be honest, but the rear brakes on these tag axles are just so expensive to get sorted. So, you know, it's a good thing that we've done it for you before you've had to pay it out for yourself. So, but you know, pretty much every one of these tag axle vehicles do have the same kind of thing where the rear brakes all need doing. So, you know, it's all done now anyway. But that's why it was so expensive. So yeah, I think I've shown you everything I can. If there's anything you think I've missed out, you want going over again or whatever, just let us know. But otherwise, we look forward to seeing you soon to collect your van. Thanks very much.